How's it going, YouTube? Don here. In this video, we're going to talk about the top programming languages to learn in 2023. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to tell you what programming languages you should learn based on your use case. Like, say you wanted to get into game dev or mobile dev or stuff like that. And at the end of the video, if you think that I don't care what language I'm going to learn, I just want to get a job, make sure you watch till the end to hear about that. So let's start. So, if you want to get into game dev, I recommend that you start with either C++ or C#. The reason for this is most games are made in C++ and C#, so you'd be doing kind of a head start by learning those particular languages. Now, the next scenario is going to be, what if you wanted to make drivers for computers or microcontrollers? You know, like pick microcontrollers, you want to work with Arduinos, stuff like that. Then what I recommend that you learn C, right? So now let's talk about mobile development. So there's different types of mobile development, and it really does depend on what you want to do. If you want to stick to native development and you want to focus on iOS, then I would recommend learning Swift. Now the reason why I say Swift and not Objective-C is because one, Objective-C kind of sucks, and two, Swift is really a growing language. It's used a lot by iOS developers. I only know Swift. I actually have an IDE from Xcode up there right now. I'm working on a project right now, and I haven't had any troubles getting interviews in that manner. Now, if you want to learn on the Android side of things, I recommend that you learn Kotlin. Now, you can also get away with Java, but Kotlin nowadays is kind of the hot language. A lot of companies are looking out for that. So I do recommend going into that particular field. So the next thing we're going to talk about is, you might be asking yourself about cross-platform like React Native or Flutter. If you want to learn cross-platform, I recommend React Native. The reason for this is because it's heavily based on JavaScript. So it's going to be an easier transition for you, and it has a lot of use cases, right? So if you want to get into web development, there is typically different types of stacks out there. So I'm going to explain each of them in detail. So you have the MERN stack. So the MERN stack is MongoDB, Express.js, React.js, and then Node.js, right? So React.js is very, very similar to JavaScript. It has a very low learning curve, so that's why it's kind of good. And depending on where you live, if you live on the West Coast, I believe I live on the West Coast right now, and I'm seeing a lot of positions that do use React, so that's a consideration that you want to keep in mind, as opposed to the East Coast where Angular is much more prevalent. So if you live on the East Coast, I do recommend that you go with the MERN stack, which is Mongo, Express, Angular.js, and Node, right? So what are the pros and cons of this? So React was built by Facebook, and Angular was built by Google. Angular does have a slightly higher learning curve than you would if you were doing React, for example, but only if you know JavaScript, right? If you don't, if you're coming into it's brand new, then it doesn't really matter what you learn. It's just a matter of what coast that you're on, right? Now, what's another one? So the next one we're going to talk about are, you might be asking yourself, well, how about Java? What are some of the use cases of Java? Now, Java, you could use it for mobile development for sure, but I haven't really seen too many positions out there that do use Java. So those are my general recommendations for languages. Then you have other things like data analysis, data scientists, and machine learning. What language should you use for that? Well, my recommendation is Python, right? The reason why I say Python is it's just a standard in the industry right now, right? So you can't go wrong with learning Python. Now that we approach the end of the video here, you might be asking yourself, listen, I don't care what language I want to learn. I just want to learn a language that's going to get me a job. And if that's the case for you, I recommend you to learn JavaScript. And the reason for this is because there's just so many uses of JavaScript, right? But the one thing you have to keep in mind when it comes to JavaScript is the fact that everyone's learning JavaScript right now. So it is going to be very, very hard for you to actually stand out as opposed to before. But it's a great default answer either or, because simply the fact that you have different areas that you can potentially go into. But if I were in your position, I would personally learn a subfield of JavaScript, such as React Native, such as React, right? The reason for this is you want to be a specialist, you want to pick your niche, and that's just something that I've experienced that I've gotten a lot of better luck in, is just sticking to something, picking a niche. I chose to pick Swift, and that's worked well for me, right? And then lastly, another scenario you might be asking yourself is, I'm coming from a background where I have no technical knowledge, right? I'm coming from a background where I have never touched a line of code in my life. I have never used the Chrome console. I've never used any of it. It kind of intimidates me. So if that's the case, I recommend Python, because Python is the closest language to the English language, and it's going to help you get over those learning curves to help you get to the point when you're competent enough to actually be good at a language. Because once you know one language, you can pretty much learn any language, right? I started off with Swift as one of the languages I started off learning, and then I ended up getting into JavaScript, and then I got into Python, and then I got into C++ now. So that concludes the video for today. If you like content like this, give me a like, give me a comment, and subscribe as it helps support the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.